Good morning. I like that. Let's try it again. Good morning. Oh, nice. That makes me feel better. So welcome. My goodness, the room filled up so quickly. Welcome to the League of Women Voters Pasadena area's 2019-2020 October Member League Day. I'm so happy to see all of you here. I'm so happy that we have so many either first-timers or newcomers. But before I get into that, let me ask you this. Did you know, this is thanks to Gwyn Jones, did you know that on October 2nd, which was yesterday, in 1967, Thurgood Marshall was sworn in as the first African-American Supreme Court Justice. Look at that. And then on October 3rd, which is today, President Abraham Lincoln issued a proclamation designating the last Thursday in November as a day of Thanksgiving. I owe all of these to Gwyn Jones. And if you read your voter, she gives us so many things that are going on, and we appreciate that, Gwyn. Thank you. Thank you. So the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, and we do three things. We encourage informed and active participation in our government. We work to increase the understanding of major public policy issues, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. So when someone says, what does the League of Women do? You've got three things to pull from there. If you are a new League member, or you are a guest today, or your first time at a League Day, please stand up. All right, please remain standing. Please remain standing because Mary Ann is going to give you a little gift from us. These are our centennial wristbands. As you know, we're coming up on 100 years on February 14th, 2020. We want you to have one. And I'd like to just get your names quickly. Let's begin here with Robin.
Robin Ross.
Next.
Marie McDonald.
Here.
Captain Jenkins Rivera. Cynthia Kennedy. Jackie Pinn. Gail Tamita Oswald. Dara Griffin. Bertha Rivera.
Is that it? Round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Well, we want to welcome you all to the best league. Now, we have our U.S. CEO here today, and, we have over 800 leagues across the U.S., but we need her to know that Pasadena area is the what?
Best league.
The best league in the U.S. of A. So I ask you, if you are new or a guest, please join our league. We need you to help us empower voters, defend our democracy, and we hope that you'll join us in this very historic 100th anniversary year. In an earlier voter, I introduced you to our inaugural members of our DEI task force. Now, before I ask them to stand, let me hear you tell me what DEI is an acronym for. Ready?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I must give you a round of applause. All right. Thank you. We got there. Will the DEI task force please stand? All right. So, thank you. We have Jacqueline Penn, Debbie Fagan, and Dorothy King. Now, this is the inaugural task force. Obviously, they're not going to continue to do all the work. So this is an opportunity for those of you who think you'd like to do some of this work to join our committee. So that's a simple note to me, and we can make that happen. At this moment, let me introduce you more to Jacqueline Penn. She is a new league member. She lives in Sierra Madre. Yay for Sierra Madre. She is a native New Yorker, and she is taking new clients in her marriage and family therapy practice. She has graciously agreed to chair the LWVPA DEI Task Force, and Jackie is going to introduce our speaker for the morning, Jacqueline Penn.
Well, thank you very much, Pat. And I want to start by thanking Pat, who's also on the inaugural task force, DEI task force, for the contributions that have created this day and this speaker today. So thank you very much, Pat, for that. Brief, quick housekeeping note is that there are index cards on your table. So as our speaker talks to us today, if a burning question comes up, please jot it down on one of the index cards, and at the end of the program, we will have time for Q&A. Okay? So,
Jackie.
yes.
I forgot silence phones, please.
Okay. So let's take a minute to do that. Silence phones. And so you now know that I'm a new member of of the LWV, and I'm understanding very quickly that when you become a member of LWB, you get put to work really quickly on really big things. So it is both an honor as the chair of the DEI task force, and we first realized that DEI also is not an acronym, but is also God, DEI. So we do God's work in a lot of ways here. As a new member and as the chair of this task force, it is really an honor and a privilege to be able to introduce this morning's speaker. Virginia Kase is not only our CEO, she is a mother of 2 boys. She lives in Maryland with her fiance and her rescue dog, Boss. Okay? You will find a lot of dog lovers in your midst here. And prior to joining us a year ago as our CEO, Virginia was the chief operating officer for Kase, which is an organization at the forefront of immigration rights. It is an organization of over 100,000 members, so not a small organization by any stretch of the imagination. And without further ado, I invite you all to join me in welcoming and giving a warm Pasadena welcome to our featured guest, Virginia Kase.
Pasadena, as I've heard, is the best league. So I want to make sure that I stay reminded of that. And I'm so thankful and happy to be here with all of you today. When I think about the league, and I came to the league a little over a year ago. And I'll tell you, we have a running joke in the office with the board. I had to do a presentation at my 6-month mark with the board to talk about, what I had found, kind of my discovery within the league, and then what are some recommendations that I had for how we move forward. And part of my presentation was called How to Lose Your Job in 90 Days. Because as you know, we're turning 100. And there are a lot of misperceptions about this organization. So when I talk to other national partners and I go around the country and I talk to folks, people love the league. They trust the league. They know that the league is a source of nonpartisan information. They know that you get the truth. And you know it's rooted in research and positions. But some people also think that the League is an antique. And they asked me, and many funders asked me this, why is the League still relevant today? And what are you doing to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organization? Because it's a perception of some that it's just older white women. Now, I will say that that is actually not an accurate assessment of who we are, because when you go around the country, we have League members from the ages of 16 to 106, I found out is the oldest League member that I know of. Every race, background, gender that you can imagine. And some leagues are doing a better job of bringing the next generation of leaders in than others. Some are just struggling because they've been around for a long time and they're not really sure. You have the same presidents who have been in their role maybe 5 times already, and they're like, I really want to give this up to somebody else, but we're not sure how to get other people involved. When I say how to lose your job in 90 days, I was sharing some of the not so great feedback, but also it's great to know how other people see you, because sometimes we don't see ourselves the same way. And so you have this trusted brand, this wonderful organization that is doing amazing work, but also a perception that in some ways we might be outdated. So how do we tackle that? Well, I come from an activist background, and so I found out that this is the secret here. Okay. I come from an activism background. I was arrested for the first time during an anti-apartheid demonstration at the United Nations many, many years ago. And, I've engaged in civil disobedience for things that I believe in. And so in my first 90 days on the job, I actually got arrested on Capitol Hill protesting Kavanaugh. Breitbart picked up, and we have this running joke that, we found out how many people did not like the League when that happened as well. But we joke about relevance, we joke about how we need to be engaged, and understanding that the League way is not just one way. It's not just one way. Yes, we are advocates, and we advocate. Yes, we lobby. Yes, we research so that we can come up with positions that are solid, but we are also activists. Activists. And one thing that I will say, especially with young people, is that right now, in this day, in this time, in this moment, a lot of young people want to be engaged in organizations where they can flex that muscle. They can get engaged, not only in, I'm not saying everybody get arrested, although I will say, I was at an event with Bill McKibben from 350.org in Massachusetts. His mom is a League member there. And he was speaking on climate. And he said to some of our members, look, if you're already retired, there's no reason why you can't get arrested, because nobody's going to check your background for your interview for the next job. So there is some privilege in being retired. But with great advice from Bill McKibben, you can let him know on social media that I shared that story. But I've digressed a little bit. Why I'm happy to be here today, aside from Pat asking me, is because the topic around diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that's extraordinarily important to me. And you introduced my story a little bit, but I want to share with you my first voting story. And I'm just curious, from a raise of hands, how many people in the room do not remember the first time they went to vote? Don't remember it. With my first voting experience, my mom took me, my foster mom, and she took me for the first time. She was so excited. I grew up in foster care for a good part of my life, and so, but I had been with this same woman for many, many years, who is my mom. She took me, and she was so excited. She comes from Puerto Rico, which is an island out in the Caribbean, and that many of you might have heard about recently on the news. But she, when she took me, Puerto Rico was colonized by the United States. It was won after the Spanish-American War. And so Puerto Rico, like DC and the U.S. Virgin Islands and many other territories, don't have full voting rights. And so for her, when she came to the United States, it was so very important that she was an American citizen and she could vote in a presidential election. So this was a big deal for her. She instilled in us the importance of voting and the idea that our vote was not only for us, that when we vote for everybody else who is disenfranchised from the ballot box. And that's why it is so important. So she's so excited. She takes me. We get up there. And I register, I'm doing my thing for the first time, and I realize that she's having a problem. So I go over, she speaks with an accent, so sometimes people don't understand her that well. And they told her that this had been her polling location for many years. Told her she needed to go find proof of address. She needed to find proof of address. And so she wasn't supposed to, by the way. She went back home because she was not going to allow that to deter her, and she got her proof of address that she needed to bring. They wanted her to bring a utility bill. They were very specific to make sure that she actually lived in our district to be able to vote. I'm horrified, but I'm young. I don't know. I don't know any of this. I don't know what the rules are. She goes, she takes it, she slams it down, she says, toma, which means take it in Spanish. And she was proceeded to vote that day. But it taught me two things. The first is that it's not always easy to vote. But it was easy for me because of how I look, and she was a brown woman. And it was the first time that I became aware of the privilege that I walked with. And I think that that's an important thing for all of us to notice, is that we all navigate this world and this space very, very differently. So that's why, for me, not only did I become passionate about voting rights, but it also became a moment when I realized that I had a responsibility, that I was going to have access and privilege that other people did not have, and it was how I used that that has really motivated me for everything that I've done since. So being here today, I'm going to say, I don't like to be Debbie Downer, but I will say that talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion is not always a fun topic or a comfortable topic for folks. It's just not, because we have to look at ourselves and sometimes notice things that we didn't notice before. So I could give the nice cookie cutter CEO speech, but I'm not going to do that because I don't think that that's fair, and it treats people like children, and nobody here is a child. I also want to say that I'm going to put myself out there to talk about some of my own issues with diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I think in order for us to be able to have a transparent conversation, we also need to look at the things that are not so great about ourselves. And so I'm going to give you an example. In a former job that I held, I was the person who was responsible for selecting our organization's healthcare plan. I was the COO of this organization, and so, every year you're renewing people's health benefits, and you have to figure out which insurance company, and there's all this stuff. And so I had a staff person who had come, who had recently been hired, and said to me that he had been born a woman, and that he wanted me to know that he preferred the gender pronouns him and he. And of course, I was fine with that. He said, but you told me that I could always talk to you if I had an issue, and I just wanted you to know that the healthcare plan that we have is very discriminatory against transgender people. I don't have equal benefits because of who I am. I was horrified. Here I am thinking I'm super progressive, I've got it under it, and I was selecting a healthcare plan that was not inclusive of other people, that somebody could not benefit from, because it wasn't even something that I thought about. It didn't impact me. I didn't have to worry about healthcare for myself, or whether my hormone medication would be covered, or whether any of my reproductive healthcare would be covered as a transgender person. None of those things, it never crossed my mind. And so one of the things, and the point that I want to make about that is part of diversity, equity, and inclusion is trying to imagine what it is for somebody else's experience to walk. What is it like to be somebody else? Because oftentimes we think about it just from our own lens. We don't think about certain things. This person also said to me that they were struggling to use the bathroom in our building because we only had male and female bathrooms. Something simple as using a bathroom became a barrier to this person because we didn't have any gender-neutral bathrooms. So regardless of how you feel personally about the LGBTQ community or how you feel about transgender folks, the reality is that I was responsible for this organization and I was making it difficult for somebody else to be able to do something as simple as use the bathroom. So that's strike two. I'm already feeling horrible. But after reviewing the health insurance plan and finding out that there were lots of problems there, and in my quest to keep healthcare costs under control, I had inadvertently discriminated against somebody else. And I realized that my privilege as a cisgender woman was kind of on full display. What we also did within a week was make sure that we had one bathroom on every floor that was all gender, so that we could make sure that there was at least accessibility, so that nobody had to go through the shame of having to go back and forth, knowing that people view that person differently, regardless. We see ourselves differently than how everybody else sees us in this world. And while I couldn't change our healthcare plan in the middle of the year, I did make sure that we had a plan that under the Affordable Care Act that would allow, that we would pay for that so that that person had adequate health care, because sometimes you just have to fix things while you're trying to work on it. But I share this story for a few reasons. First is because a lot of people think that diversity, equity, and inclusion is only about race. And it's not. It's about a lot of different things. And so as we embark on this journey and we talk about what inclusion really is, what it is to be diverse and equitable, I want you to make sure that you're opening your minds to the possibility that this is a conversation that is not just about race, although it is very much about race. But it's race and it's so much more. And the second, I think it's important to know that this is not one of those conversations or work that you embark upon that is, there's no toolkit that's going to help you figure it out. There's no check, and the League loves toolkits. I mean, there are things that you can do that will help you be more aware while you're conditioning yourself to think differently. But this is going to require inner work for each of us. And it's a never-ending journey. I am on this journey every single day of my life. I learn new things. And I have kids who are 24 and 28, so trust me, I learn things. I'm like, when did this become a thing? How does this even, So it's with all of us. And I think it's also important to note that we're just in this perpetual state of progress. It's always just going to be. And so being able to submit to that and accept it, it's okay. Our league started 100 years ago next year, the League of Women Voters. Like, what an amazing accomplishment. But the reality is that some of our founders were racist. And we have to be able to say that it's what it was. I had somebody ask me, how do we frame the narrative around the 100th? And one of the things that I replied to that person was, we don't frame anything. It's just history. It's truth. There's something about just being able to acknowledge and say that this is what happened. But what have we learned from the mistakes of the past so that we are not repeating them? And it's also about being able to acknowledge that there were systems that were created within our organization. It's not the fault of anybody in this room. We weren't here. But many people benefited from those systems. And what it did was it alienated many other people. And so how are we going to behave differently? How are we going to act differently so that we can make sure that we're not repeating those mistakes and that we're acknowledging our history as simply truth? It just is. And it doesn't mean that every single person was a racist. It doesn't mean that every single person meant to do what was done to some people, but some were. And it's just the reality of the time, and that is not okay. And it wasn't okay because it disenfranchised major groups of people, but it doesn't mean that we can't correct the mistakes of the past by what we do today. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she advocates for Native American women. And she was saying how in tribal communities, oftentimes they just want folks to acknowledge and understand the pain and the hurt that exists among people in tribal communities who weren't even considered fully citizens until 1924, and who still today on reservation are being discriminated against as not being considered actual Americans. Can you imagine that? As a Native American person being told that you're not actually an American? And so, again, this is not something new that we're experiencing. It's just something that we need to be able to be more comfortable being in conversation with one another about. I talked about, over the course of our history, we have until more recently been known as an educated, wealthy white women's organization. And in the past, there was little that was done to intentionally change that perception. And now, of course, there are many leagues who are and have been diverse, equitable, and inclusive, and some are still struggling on how to get there. And some just don't think we need to change because everything is just working fine right now. We're educating voters. We're defending democracy. I mean, we're okay. We don't need to do anything. And I'm going to we did a recent survey from the national office not too long ago. And one person responded in the survey when we were asking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in your leagues. That person responded that Hispanic and Black people have their own organizations and they don't want to work with us. So, full pause. What? What? But that's a reality for some people. That they think, well, they have their own stuff. They don't really want to come with us. I can assure you that most people do if they feel welcome. It's about being in welcoming spaces. And I talked about that, just going back to my own experience with my mom. As a woman who is half Hispanic and half Irish, I look differently than she does. And knowing that I'm welcome in spaces that she's not would make me not want to be in those spaces. And I'm not saying that is the case with this league. I'm just saying, as a general term. But again, I think the reason for this is because at our beginning, we just didn't embrace the contributions and leadership of all women, regardless of race or education level or economic background, which are also other perceptions that people have of the league, right? That you have to be wealthy, you have to be well educated, and making sure that we are communicating to people, that we are welcoming of everybody, that we're not creating barriers through our membership, which is something we're working on trying to change. How do we make it more accessible for people financially? And that you don't have to be a subject matter expert. Now, I don't know about everybody here, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, I wasn't a subject matter expert in redistricting until I came to the league. Or I wasn't an expert at this until I became at the league, because oftentimes, as you said, you get a job to do. Really, really quickly, you'll get a job to do at the league. So we want to make sure that everybody is able to have that same opportunity to become subject matter experts. But also, if you don't want to, that's okay. You might be amazing at something else. And so really looking at how do we do an analysis of people's full skills and talents and abilities to see that how we can best apply what they bring to the table to the way that we move the work. So, here we are, we're trying to right the wrongs of our past and become what we should have always been as an organization. And we must. Because it's not only a moral imperative, although I will say that I do hope that everybody at their core, and I assume that everybody who's here today is a good person, and you want to not be, racist, and you don't want to be discriminating against anybody. So we'll start with that as an even ground. I'm assuming that that's not the case. But it's also for the survival of our organization. We have 50-year members. We have people who have been in the League who have given their entire life to this organization, to defending our democracy, to empowering voters. And this is your legacy, leaving a strong organization behind that will continue for the next 100 years because, last time I checked, there's somebody who's always trying to mess with our democracy. And so we want to make sure that we have people, more than other these days, but we want to make sure that we're building an organization and continuing to build an organization for our second act, so to speak, that continues well on into the future. And I think you're capable of doing that. I know that you are capable of doing that. But it also means that representation matters. Because when we talk about having a strong organization, a strong inclusive organization, we need to be thinking about who needs to be at the table. And sometimes it's really hard to put yourself out there, especially when we tend to stay in our own little circles. I think you can go probably almost anywhere in America, and there are certain communities where any single one of us in this room may not feel comfortable going into. Have you ever been in that moment, in that space, where you're sitting there and somebody is speaking another language, and you're like, I don't know what they're saying. I wonder if they're talking about me. Or if you go in and you make assumptions about who lives in that community just because of the way that they look. Everybody operates from a certain place of privilege, whether we realize it or not, whether it's economic privilege, whether it's an educational privilege that we have, whether it's our race, whether it's our gender, we all operate in that. So it's how do we get ourselves uncomfortable enough to reach out to those who maybe are not like us? It was funny, a friend of mine just moved to Ohio. And I get stories, you have friends who live around the country, people move over time. And so everybody knows I'm at the League now. And so, of course, everybody has a League story that they want to tell me and a recommendation for what I should be doing. And I get lots of recommendations. So it's not only from League members who tell me what I need to be doing, but I also get friends and family who tell me what we should be doing. You guys should be doing this. Yeah, thank you. It costs $1 million. You tell me how we're going to do it. But a friend of mine moved, and she went to, there's a festival in Ohio called Festival Latino. And so it's a big Latin festival, and they have musicians and everything else. And she said, I just wanted to tell you, I went to this festival. I've been living here for a month. And I saw a League table there. And there were these little old ladies out there dancing salsa. She said they weren't very good. But she said she appreciated it so much. And people saw their enthusiasm, and they wanted to talk to the League. And she actually registered to vote that day. And that, for me, is when we talk about, when I say it doesn't necessarily always require a toolkit, sometimes it's finding local festivals, finding events that are happening in communities, not only your own communities, or finding out who the organizations are who are working in communities that maybe don't have somebody who is focusing on voter registration, who don't have somebody who are focusing on voting rights, who are not focusing on the issues that you're facing in your local league, and partnering with them, and not just a transactional partnership, give us a table at your event or let us have access. It's about building power collectively. How are we getting out of these transactional relationships, these quid pro quo? Everybody's heard quid pro quo a lot lately, right? These quid pro quo relationships, and into relationships that are truly partnerships in nature. And so I think sometimes we overanalyze it, and sometimes it's just about coming with your true authentic self and saying, we really love what you're doing. We want to be a part of it. And here's what we bring to the table. How can we be a partner? I get off script and I end up not reading any other remarks that I have written, so I do apologize. But I also want to talk about providing individual learning opportunities, and we talk about what it is that we can do and what we're doing. And I think the first thing is deepening our own sense of self-awareness. Understanding the implicit biases that we all have. There's this thing, I know you have a psychologist in the room, but I was told that our brain decides in 7 seconds what we think somebody is. That fight or flight mentality that we have. But we decide in 7 seconds whether or not somebody is safe or whether you're afraid of them. 7 seconds. I mean, the brain works pretty fast. We don't even know what's happening, and we've already summed somebody up. You've made assumptions about me. As soon as I walked in the room or as soon as I started speaking, many of you made judgments about who you thought I was, as I did with every single one of you. It just is. It's part of how we're hardwired. It's part of our DNA. We can't control it. So being able to examine, and those are called implicit, that's bias, right? And so how we examine those things immediately and checking ourselves, checking our assumptions is really important. Now, I'm not saying that some are not accurate. We know, that, if I go in and I see somebody who in a right to carry state and they have a gun, I am automatically going to be fearful of that person. Because for me, I grew up in a community where people were killed. And so guns are a thing that I am fearful of naturally, but it's not to mean, but so I automatically have to decide, is this person safe or are they not? And that's maybe not the perfect example, but what I mean by it is that we have to be willing to examine those things for ourselves. And then we all have to be ready to engage in potentially difficult conversations. Because sometimes those biases, and as we're trying to be more approachable or we're trying to be more accessible to people, sometimes there's that awkward question that you ask, and you realize, oh, I just asked the wrong question. That feels really uncomfortable. And it's being able to give permission to people to correct you. Sometimes it's starting with, I apologize for asking this question if I'm incorrect, but... And being open to being taught. I think one of the loveliest things that I've experienced is people saying, especially down south, they have that bless your heart, which means that you just said something that was completely bad. So is being open to having somebody say, bless your heart, dear, let me explain this to you. But it's also okay, especially when we're talking about issues of race, to walk away understanding that you're going to feel bad. Has anybody been to the African American Museum in DC yet? If you have, it's an amazing experience, as is the Holocaust Museum. But you have, as a human, you walk away with this feeling. When you walk through that bottom floor of the African American Museum, when you walk through the Holocaust Museum, there is a feeling that will sit with you. It feels heavy. Some of these conversations are going to feel that way. But that's okay, because it's meant for us to process. It's meant for us to think about it, so that we can use that to inform how we move forward and see ourselves in the future and how we interact with other people. Being able to understand what somebody else's experience is and where they come from is so, so very important. And I will say that once you start doing that, you realize that you start approaching decision-making differently. You start on this journey of personal growth that actually makes you start to feel better. And it's like when you start to know things, it's like being back in school again. You get hungry, you want to understand more, because this world opens up to you that you didn't realize exists, and you become more self-aware of who you are and how you navigate other people, relationships. The other thing I think is important is aligning the organization. So once you start to do some of that deep inner work, once you start to think about how you're working as a league, how you're examining yourself as a human being, it's aligning the organization. And the DEI committee is a great start. But I would love to see a larger DEI committee, and I would love to be at a place in this organization where people aren't being asked to be part of that committee, but that people are saying, I want to be part of this because it's important to me. It's something that I embrace and I value. The other thing is, I don't know if have you guys adopted the policy?
Yes.
Yes, and so making sure that when
First page of the yearbook,
yeah.
just as a reminder.
Okay, it's on the first page of your yearbook, she said. But that there's a line in there and it says, there shall be no barriers to full participation in this organization. And I think that that's something that's really important, is that full participation for a young person, for example. I can't tell you how many young people have joined the league and said, well, I got there, they asked me to do social media. They think I'm good with Instagram. I have a master's degree in policy, but I've been asked to do social media. So I think it's just as an example, just making sure that when we talk about full participation, again, it's doing that full review of what skills and talents people have and making sure that as we look at them, whether they're young. And I don't know, my mom tells me something. My mom turned 70, and she said, I don't know what happened when I turned 70. Somehow they thought that I just got back to my third grade education level where people make assessments about you like as you get older. She was like, I actually had a career for a really long time, and I know some things. I can actually add value. So again, going back to this idea of full participation, what does it mean for somebody, for themselves, to want to fully participate in the league? And I think, our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, we need to look at it as a value in this organization. Not any different than our mission or our nonpartisan policy. Because one thing I know about league members is we are hardcore about our nonpartisan policy. It's a value. If somebody said, nope, we're gonna start endorsing candidates, everybody would be up in arms. No, we need to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion no different than we do our nonpartisan policy. And I think what I would like to see is every league asking themselves, are we being equitable and inclusive with every decision that we make? And we had to do this at the national office. When I first got there, we were doing an analysis, and I was like, okay, our hiring practices are not so good. Our vendor policies, not so good. How we do our budgeting, not so good. Because we weren't using, we used to do what we called SMART goals. Now we have SMARTY goals. And the IE is inclusive and equitable. Are we looking at our hiring practices and making sure that not only we say that nice little line, we encourage, minorities to apply or whatever, but it's we welcome and encourage and desire candidates of differing abilities, DACA recipients, of different backgrounds to apply. We want you in our organization. It's not just about going the bare minimum, but it's how are we going the mile? How are we going that extra? When we budget in our vendor policies, for example, we were talking about vendor policies, we had no preference for female, minority, disenfranchised businesses. We do now. They get extra points when they apply for a contract. When we were doing our budgeting, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but yet we're not including anything for diversity, equity, and inclusion in our budgeting other than the bare minimum. So we talk about it, but are we really investing in it? And so those are the types of things, as you're thinking about with your local league, how are we actually walking the walk? And then modeling who we aim to be. You guys are the greatest league, right? The best league? Yeah. So policy is not going to cut it. It's going to mean that every single one of you, every single one of us, being able to go out into spaces that are uncomfortable for us at times. And I'm going to give you a few examples. about how we can go ahead and build relationships. And I think there was a league in Georgia who did a really great job this past election. The local league first wanted to rush to deal with some voting equipment that had gone down. Now, we already know Georgia was like a hot seat for the country. Voting equipment wasn't working, and league members were there immediately to triage. And they first went to jump into action because they wanted to be the ones to deal with this situation. And thankfully, the person who was the president at the time was a woman of color. She calls us up and she's like, hey, this is what's going on, because we're constantly in conversation with folks when there are issues throughout the country so that we're connecting them with our legal partners immediately on the ground. She said, I had to tell them to hold their horses. I said, well, what happened? She said, well, they wanted to fix everything. And I said, okay. She was like, yeah. She was like, I have a lot of older white ladies in this league. And she said, the NAACP is right here. Instead of, I instructed them they needed to hold off. Let's work with the NAACP so we can make sure that we're lifting a partner and ally up in this space and not trying to come in and be the older white lady saving the day. Again, I told you this wasn't all going to be comfortable stuff to talk about. But it's important for us to be self-aware of how we navigate these spaces and looking at who else is in the room, who else is in the landscape, who our partners are, who our allies are, because sometimes we're not going to be the ones who need to lean in. Sometimes our job is to lift up other partners and other organizations when certain things are happening. And that is just one example of knowing when you lean in or when you need to pull back. Because, and what Tracy said to me was, I'm so glad that this is what happened, because the perception of the league would have been very, very different had the league gone in and they were calling it like the white savior complex, right? And so we needed to make sure that we were being self-aware, and it wasn't through any bad intention. There was no bad intention there. People wanted to just fix a problem so people could vote. But that extra step actually made a difference in building a better relationship with that local NAACP chapter as well, which has gone on to bear more fruit because now they can do voter registration together, they're having honest dialogue, and they're in true partnership. It's not just a transactional relationship. And so when we talk about, how we go into spaces, I think it's important for us to be able to go deep and be authentic with who we are and be transparent with what we're trying to achieve. Because tokenizing people just because we want to have, like, I've heard some boards say, we want to diversify our board. Okay. Well, it is not Noah's Ark. We're not like trying to check off 2 by 2. We need to really make sure that we're, again, looking at how are we bringing our authentic selves and thinking about what does this mean for us as an organization, because people want to feel valued and they want to feel like they're not just there because of who they are, but actually what their contributions and what they bring. And then I think one of the things, or the most important message I can bring is that, people know I talk about building power. It's been one of the biggest things that I've been focusing on over this past year, is I believe that the League is a powerful political organization, and I own that. I tell people we are one of the most powerful political organizations in this country. We have the ability to influence policy. We register more voters on the ground than any other partner. The League is the largest on-the-ground partner for National Voter Registration Day. That is powerful. We have influence at Capitol Hill. We have influence at every state legislature. We have influence in every city hall. We have influence in every county and every congressional district in this country. We are a powerful political organization, and we need to be able to own that power. But we also need to be able to share our power. Because the only way that we're going to become the organization that we want to become is to be able to make a bigger table, to pull out more chairs, to make sure that when people come to us, they realize that they are a part of something bigger where they are valued for who they are and what they bring to the table. And power shouldn't stay concentrated in the hands of a few anyway. I've talked to some boards and they said, again, I've been president 5 times, or I've been chair of our advocacy committee for how many times, and some people want to give it away, but some people hold on to it. So it's how do we step aside, feel comfortable raising up that next group of leaders, bringing other people in to help us with achieving our mission? Because again, it's not about us. This is about voters. This is about making sure that every single voter, every single person in our communities has access. And so we need to make sure that our organization is reflective of what our communities look like. I know I said before that this wasn't going to be a cookie cutter CEO speech, and I know it's been a heavy topic, but I also want to appreciate where we are as a league today. We're about to turn 100. And you don't turn 100 in an organization, in the nonprofit world, in this political environment, without being amazing. I mean, no, it's true. We are doing an amazing job. The league reached out to over 1,000 elections officials last fall throughout the country. That's the work that you all are doing. You have power and influence that more than what you even realize. I talked about to somebody else, I said, it's so funny because we see ourselves individually as not being powerful. A lot of times I'm not powerful. But when we get this collective we, when we talk about us, what we can do, everything changes. Something about being a league member that changes who we are. And so I think that as we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and we talk about the league and how we're changing public policy and we're changing laws and we're fighting for good government and we're fighting laws that protect civil and human rights and we're fighting against racism and xenophobia and homophobia and every other form of discrimination. And as we hold accountable those who would seek to destroy all that is good about our country, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for us. There are people who are going to accuse you of being partisan because you stand for certain issues or policies. And there are those people who will try to obstruct everything that you do. But I want to be honest with you. It's because they fear you. They do. They fear the work that the league is doing. Because those people don't want the diverse, equitable, and inclusive country that we want and we believe in. So I want you to make sure that as you start to embark on this work, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of your success. And don't you question for 1 minute whether or not what you're doing is worth it. It's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, but that's okay. Because nothing that is worth doing ever really comes easy. And it's just as important today as it was 99 years ago. And I want you to think for a moment, think about the country that we want to have. We don't want to be a country where immigrants or people who are speaking Spanish are being beaten. We don't want to be the type of country where a black man is being marched by police down the street with a noose around his neck. I don't know if anybody has seen that recently.
Yeah.
We don't want to be the type of country where children are in cages on our border. We don't want to be the type of country that says it's just some people. It's just those people. When we have the ability to be a bridge, to be a connector, to be the organization that can be an example of how we advance our country forward and how we live and practice our work through that DEI lens is so, so very important. And so I want to say that as we continue to fight in pursuit of a more perfect democracy, we need to do so with a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just in our critical elections work and reaching out to underserved communities, but by building an organization where people from all backgrounds feel welcome and included in decision making. Because when we welcome new leaders into the league and better reflect our communities, we are truly living up to our values and our mission of empowering voters and defending democracy. And I want you to know that you're not alone in doing this work. Along with the staff at the national office, we're going to stand here to help you and support you. And I'm excited to see what happens because because I know that this is something that we can do together. Now, I will say that we're at the level 1 phase. And what I mean is, we're just at a turning point in this organization. Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins, who used to be a former past president, she did a webinar not too long ago, and we were having this conversation when I first got on board. She said, we started Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative in the 90s. I said, oh? She said, yeah. She said, she's an African-American woman. She said, yeah, it lasted until I wasn't the president anymore. So what I will say is that I'm asking each of you today to make sure that this is a commitment that you have for yourselves, for this organization, for this league, that it isn't dependent on who is in the office of the president in your league. It isn't dependent on who is part of your diversity, equity, and inclusion chair. That it isn't honestly, it isn't the responsibility of women and men of color in this organization to bear the burden of moving this forward. That we do this with one another as equals, knowing that we all have the same goal in mind, and that is the future longevity of our organization. I want to thank you all for letting me come, and I am happy to ask questions, or answer questions. I can ask a lot of questions, so
thank you.
Come over here. So the first question is a great question, and it says, what does cisgender mean?
Cisgender. That means that you see yourself in the gender that you were born in. So I am a cisgender female, meaning I'm a straight woman.
CIS. Cisgender.
All I know is that I'm not the expert on LGBTQIA. I will say that, but cisgender just means that you are straight and in the gender that you were born in. So you're not. So if you were born as a straight male, you see yourselves as a straight male. If you see yourself as one gender, cisgender, and the one that you were naturally born with.
Okay. All right. So the next question is, you mentioned the importance of working in partnership with organizations like the NAACP. How do we manage the tendency to see partnerships as primarily an opportunity to recruit individuals for league membership?
So I'm a firm believer that first, there are so many organizations that you can actually be part of more than one. So that's, I think, a great thing in this world. Unlike, your political affiliation, you can't be a Democrat and Republican at the same time. You have to pick one. But you can be a member of the NAACP. And the one thing that I think is important for folks who don't know, anybody can become a member of the NAACP. They have a great website. You go on there, you can become a member, and you can find out where your locations are and where your local meetings are. You can actually be a league member and an NAACP member. It doesn't matter what race you are. They're a great organization also. So, but as far as recruiting membership, I think I'm all about inviting people to become a member whenever you can, because I was just in a room of 1,000 people the other day, and I was like, we want you to become a member of the league, so I always feel good about inviting people. But I will say, I think the important part is, again, focusing on becoming a more welcoming league, because people will generally want to join us when they see that what we're doing is something that they can be a part of in a meaningful way.
So a little bit of a follow-up question is, is there a list of partner organizations that we typically work with?
So at I would say A is here at your local level. I'm not sure all of your local organizations. You would know better than I am who your local organizations are, but I think that's something Pat can help you with. I know at the national level, we have a list of national partners that we work on for our legislative and lobbying issues and things. And we do, I'm happy to share those with you as well. Some of them do have local and state chapters, but there are very few federated organizations like ours left. And so I don't know, Common Cause obviously is a strong partner of ours here in California, but they're also nationally a partner. I don't know if there's a local Pasadena Common Cause or not, but they're another one who are very close to what we're doing. Obviously NAACP. We work a lot with historically black colleges and sororities and fraternities. So there are a lot of different organizations. We would just have to see what levels up. But Pat, I'm sure, can find a whole list of people.
Okay, so next question. How ideologically diverse are the League of Women Voter members? And what are some pros and cons of increasing that diversity? So there are 3 questions. Mm-hmm. And should LWV increase this to help bridge the U.S. partisan divide?
Okay, so we must start. Can I see that? I want to make sure I answer the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so ideologically diverse are LWV partners. They're across the board. So I think one of the things is finding out where the intersections for us exist on the things that we care about. We have had partners who are, and mind you, I don't know if your league has a C3 and a C4. Some of this is like, issues and things like that. Yeah, C3. So they're across the board. I think it's finding out where the intersections exist. You don't have to be 100% aligned with an organization to be able to partner on things that are areas of common interest. So if, for example, getting out the vote, GOTV work, if voter registration, if you have an issue on climate, you might have a far left group on climate, but their policies line up. We really care about clean water together, and that's where our issue. So if these other things, as long as they are not, how do I put it? If you can't find intersections, it doesn't happen. But I think the diversity in our ideological beliefs, it's okay. It's okay. There are a lot of leagues in the southern states, for example, who have had to partner with conservative groups because they just know that they're not going to be able to have a candidate forum or a debate without them. They just won't be able to do it. They will not get anybody to show up. Their positions might be very different from the league's positions, but it also leads to oftentimes a really great debate as well. And so those, I would say, you have to figure out what feels comfortable for yourselves as a league to make sure that you can get a relationship. And then it says, should LWV increase this to help bridge the U.S. partisan divide? I mean, I think being able to find those intersections, the Democracy Fund is a funder of ours at the national office, and they bring together for meals, actually, different thought leaders. So I've sat across the table from some people who I really don't agree with, but it's hard to argue when you have food in your mouth. And but they're very intentional about convening organizations. And we have tried to do the same thing as convening and working with people at times and bringing other partners together to find out where are those areas where we can work together, or at least, again, bridging that partisan divide, because we are this environment is such a hyper-partisan environment today that, especially in D.C., and that D.C. bubble, we don't even eat in the same restaurants, my God. I mean, so, no, seriously, you won't see somebody going into the Trump Hotel. You won't. You will not see, a Democrat or a progressive person going into there. They'll be protesting outside. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be in conversation with other people, because we're not going to get beyond this. There's going to be a lot of cleanup to do in our country in the years to come for the damage that's happened. And so I am a full proponent of that.
Okay. How or what are the top 3 things a DEI committee or task force should take on, and what's the best way that we can capture our demographics?
I'll start with the demographics. So this becomes a controversial subject for some, I found. Change your membership form.
Yes. What did you say? Do we
Change the membership form
change it? Oh, yes.
to capture demographic information. Yeah, there you go. Number one way to capture demographic information is to do it on your membership form. People will volunteer or not to give that information, but if we want, and that's something nationally that we're also working with, trying to work with leagues on doing, because we want to know, we want to have a better idea of who's in who's in the organization. What are the top 3 things a DEI committee or task force should take on? Okay, so there are different creative ways to do that. I will say that if you're talking about youth diversity, for example, one of the programs that I saw, which is great, you should connect with Michelle Witt in Minnesota. She's the state executive director, and the leadership there is absolutely amazing. They have gone into high schools and started like league chapters. They're not official leagues, they're under the wing of that league. And what they're doing with those members, they're student members, they're waived. They've developed these like civics clubs in the high schools, and they start with the kids, I think, like a junior or senior in high school. And so now these kids who first started are actually forming like little league chapters in the universities that they're going to. And so not only are they doing civic engagement and voter registration, but they're giving these young people seats on the board of directors as well. And they're part of their diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. So they're starting to build out a pipeline, and that is one of the models that I really would lift up and say as far as bringing more young people into the mix. There's another league, I'll tell you, it sounds, especially for people who like to read, and it might sound like something really, really small, but they have this like book club in another league. And they have some really good books on race. They have really good books on, a variety of different diversity, equity, and inclusion topics. And then they just convene and talk about it, and how did it make you feel, and they bring in guest speakers. Some of it doesn't have to be like rocket science. Some of it is simple things that are just allowing you to learn a little bit more. And then obviously workshops and trainers. I did one of the most difficult trainings that I had done in my life, and it was on dismantling racism within yourself, and it was hard. It was deep. It was like a 3-day, like in-depth. You talk about feeling bad. I was like, oh my God, I'm horrible. And everybody who went through it. And it was very deep. It was dismantling racism within the Latino community and the colorism in the Latino community. It was done with African Americans and colorism in the African American community, and with white folks, she said explain colorism. So for those who don't know, sometimes I use my progressive terms. Colorism in the Latino community, I can give a perfect example, is when the slave trade happened. Obviously, there were enslaved people who were brought over through the triangular slave trade, and they were brought over to South America, Central America, the Caribbean, here in the United States. And, there was also what we call people who see themselves as mestizos, so there were indigenous people who lived in each of those countries as here in the United States. And then the Europeans who brought them here, who were enslaving people. And so the lighter your complexion, the better you were considered. And so it was the idea that, if you, being lighter meant being good. You had good hair, meaning that your hair had no kinks or curls, so the straighter your hair was, the lighter your skin was. And so that was internalized by many people within our own communities, within the Hispanic and African American communities. And you see it today. I mean, there's a big issue in the Hispanic community just when you look at television and representation. So they have telenovelas, so it's all white, European-looking women. And the women who are playing servants are usually darker skin. So there's colorism within our own communities as well. No different than here in the United States. Yeah. There's something else. Please do.
There was a time on African Americans' birth certificates they used to write.
Yeah.
Yes, nice terms.
Yeah.
That was one of the nice terms. Yeah.
Please, ma'am. Is this microphone able to move around? Because I think there's an educational opportunity here for a lot of people. Please, ma'am, go.
My name is Betty Jo Ford.
Hi, Betty Jo.
I want to say that was a time when we had to pass the paperback test.
Oh, yes.
The paperback is like my color. If I get a little darker than me, I wouldn't pass. It's a time for organization that our own people who had to be lighter than I was to be included in certain things.
That's right.
A lot of us
Definitely
don't-
true. My mother and father.
Yeah.
Most of the sororities.
Yeah, and that was an example she gave for those who couldn't hear, is that there was the brown paper bag test, that your skin had to be lighter than a brown paper bag to be included in certain congregations, institutions, privileged clubs. Yeah. So there's, there's a saying, people will say white is right, so there was this goal of, and it still is pervasive around the world today. You look at certain countries where people bleach their skin because they want to be able to be more accepted, because there's a global standard for beauty that is just, and so when we talk about colorism, it's just, there's a lot of different things that go into that, and that I think is a perfect example.
There's some great books around about it as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, is LWV planning to be involved in the presidential debates? Something we did many years ago.
So, I'll answer that with a story. As we're planning for the 100th, as we are, this is the most complicated microphone. Here we go. As we are planning for the 100th, somebody said to me, who's going to be our speaker? I was here for the 50th League anniversary, and we used to invite the president to come to speak. And so I said, so my response was, I don't know if we can afford to bring Hillary Clinton, but she actually spoke at the 75th. She's a former League member, so we joke, our popular vote joke, obviously. So debates, presidential debates. So there is a lot of controversy over that. The League many years ago made a conscious decision not to be involved in the debates. In fact, the League president at the time famously said that she would not be she would not be a part of the hoodwinking of the American people when the parties took over the debates. So that was a decision that was made back then, because when the parties took over, they decided that they were going to control the questions that we were allowed to ask. And those questions were not always questions that we thought were the ones that the American people wanted to ask. They were the ones that the parties thought their candidates could best answer.
Right.
So right now we have, there is a growing demand by the American people for the leagues to be re-engaged, and we are open to conversation with the parties. But the conversation with the parties is... let's just say they're not really open to the idea at this point. So while we would love to be able to have a debate that the League hosted, the parties will not allow it. And so we would love them to, though, because we think that this is the one moment in history and a place where the American people will actually trust what's coming out of those debates.
So we have one comment and then one last question. So the comment is to not forget to include people with disabilities,
Yep.
i.e. people who are in wheelchairs or who in some other way need support, to be mobile. And our last question is this. A new electronic voting system is being implemented in California for March 2020. Is the League addressing education of users or voters, especially in low-income, low-education communities, so that they will know how to vote?
That sounds like a local answer for me, because at the national level, we don't focus into the state. That would be state. Yeah, that would be state and local. So that is something that your local president would need to respond to.
We are there. Whoever asked the question, yes. We had a whole league day in September on that question, and we would love you to get active with us as we push out. Last weekend was the mock election. How many participated in the mock election? Excellent, excellent, excellent. So you got a chance to see what it's going to look like, how things are gonna roll out. And we need everyone talking about this around the dinner table, at church, in the nightclub, wherever you are, wherever you go, we need you talking about this, okay?
And can I just say something in closing, because I'm just gonna hold it right here. I really appreciate being able to come out here and be with all of you. Being able to be the CEO of the League for the past year has been an extraordinary privilege for me. It really has, because I've gotten to see so much of the country and meet so many members. And one of the things, somebody asked me recently, a funder, they said we were applying for some grant funding, and she said, what is this new invigorated League? You know, what is so special about the League today? And the thing that I say is that it's ordinary people who are doing extraordinary work. Extraordinary work. And we are coming up, and it's not partisan for me to say, that we are coming up and we are facing what is probably one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime. And I was recently at an election security event, and I was told by election security experts that they need the League now more than ever. Because we are one of the only sources of nonpartisan, accurate information. So your voter guides, the debates, the candidate forums, the work that you are doing with other people in the community in educating voters is so important. That education of voters is actually one of the greatest defenses that we have for our democracy right now, to make sure that people are getting accurate voter information, that they're getting information that is not coming off of the internet or off of some fake website or off of some, propaganda for some far, out of the stratosphere group. I mean, it is actual information that is helping people make informed decisions. And now more than ever, people need it. Now more than ever, the League is so, so very important. And that's one of the other reasons why, for me, the diversity, equity, and inclusion work is so important, because it's not just about us. It's not just about people who are already high propensity voters who are going to go out there. It's about that person who is really upset about what's happening right now, one way or the other. No judgment. And we want to make sure that they have the information they need to make the right vote. That is translated into languages, partnering with other organizations who maybe have the linguistic capacity to be able to help translate voter guides. Being able to bring in other members who can help us make sure that people have the information they need, that they're hearing it in their own language. We talk about able-bodied people, making sure that when people go to vote, that there is accessibility. That when you have forums and events, that there is an actual ramp that people can access and get upstairs. I don't know how many seniors I know of who have these, you have a meeting on the 3rd floor and it's a walk-up. Well, guess what? They're not going to be able to come if they're in a cane or a wheelchair. So it's so important right now, because where we are it's a frightening time. It is a frightening time. We have a lot that is happening, and so you guys are on the front lines, and I just appreciate you all so much for everything you're doing. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
So Before you sit down, Virginia, come back, because we do have a gift for you from our league. I don't know how you packed, but maybe if this will fit in there, or you can open it and
They
it'll
do
fit
not.
in there.
They don't let you bring wrapped
I know,
packages.
so you have to open it and put it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
But check it out when you have a chance. You could open it now if you want, but you don't have to. Let's thank Virginia. This is so wonderful. I know that she is always on the road. She's, as you heard me say, over 800 leagues. It's a lot of work and a lot of travel and trying to move around. She has children. She's got a wonderful fiance, I'm imagining, but he has to be wonderful if he's got her. And she's got a lot going on personally. So we are just thrilled that you said yes to us.
Yes.
And we look forward to really making this next year and our next 100 years count, because this is an organization. You've heard me tell this story. Many of my friends, some of whom I saw in Chicago last week, said to me, League of Women Voters, it's interesting that you would get involved with that group. And I said, why? Because I always thought it was just for old white women. I've had that over and over and over. So we're going to do something about that. Okay? Thank you.
January 1st.
I'm sorry? Oh, yes. Thank you, Marilyn. Stand up again. This is, that Virginia, along with Chris, will be on the float in the road.
Thank you for including me. That's
and actually, there were 2 members from that group who were coming this morning. They wanted to meet you personally, but they are already overwhelmed with things going on and had to back out. But yes, we're going to get her all ready for that. And I found that you have housing now, so
Yes.
right,
It's hard to come by around
it's
this
very hard to come by.
Yes, it is.
While I'm giving out gifts, can I ask Jody to come up for a second? Jody, Kenny, please. So many of you know that Jody has been volunteering in our league office for some time now. When I first heard of the league, I heard of Jody. So when I got, Jody's been around doing a lot of great things for us. And I think sometimes, when people are there and they're doing things and they're volunteering, we don't always appreciate them in the way that I like to acknowledge people. So we just want to give Jody a big thank you. And this is just a little token. It really is nothing but a token. Drop your token for you. We appreciate you being there. Many of you think Jody actually technically works for us, but everything she's doing is as a volunteer. So when you call and you get an answer on the phone, when you come by to pick up things or drop off things, Jody is there. I wish we were paying her, but we are not, and so we just wanted to say thank you today. Thank you. All right, the DEI Task Force, stand up. Let's give them a round of applause. Debbie, over there, Dorothy, and Jackie, thank you. I'm going to make several announcements and comments. I have 3 to make. While I'm doing this, though, I want to say a couple things. I need you to stay quiet while we're doing this so that everyone can hear. If you are on the board, we would like to take a picture with Virginia. So how many board members are here? Please raise your hand. I hope quite a few of you. By the way, Martha Zavala sent me a text this morning. She's got a really bad sinus infection. And she and her family also yesterday buried one of their young family members. So she and Peter, so just keep her in your thoughts. right now, and she really wanted to be here today, but she said she's just really, really congested. So board members, I think we have enough to do a picture with Virginia, and we're going to do it outside on the steps. Thad is going to do that for us. But before that, if you are a committee chair and you have a brief update or a 1-minute announcement, I need you to come line up here while I make my announcements, okay? All right, so the first thing I need to tell you all about is we talked about, let's see, I have 3. Going green. You know what I mean by going green, right? We're actually starting to look at how many trees we kill to print things for, I'm being a little facetious, for the League of Women Voters. We use a lot of paper. That's one thing, but the second thing is that we are fully now moving into the digital age. And as most leagues around the country, we have to move our technology to today's standards, again, if we're going to attract more people, particularly younger and more diverse people. So we talked about at several other meetings, and in the last voter, I mentioned sort of a process by which we're going through to move from our printed voter to a more digital voter. In November, you will receive your voter via email. It's not totally digital yet. It will be a PDF, which means that it will look just like the printed one, except it's really prettier. It's in color. You can see the more vibrant pictures. It's really, really nice. When you open it up, if you would still like to hold and feel the paper, you can just print it out. And then you will have your voter. That will begin in November, the PDF version. You'll get an email from League of Women Voters. It will say in the subject, November voter. Okay. Now, there will be additional steps going down the line, but right now, that's the first step that the Communications Committee is recommending to us. All right, so that's the voter. The second, Siri, no, I don't want Siri. The second announcement is, I want to give you a quick update on the partnership with Pasadena Celebrates 2020, which is the Rose Parade events. In October and in the October voter, I gave you a lot of information about how you can be involved. If you're interested in being an out walker, which means that you walk behind the float, it will, first of all, let me say you have to be able to walk 5 miles. Let me just put that out there. It's a it's level, 5 miles flat, yes. And you also, it will cost you $1,000. Yes, it will cost you $1,000. And you will wear white, and you will wear an LWV sash. Now, let me say that we already have, I believe, 3 LWV outwalkers. We have 4. That's right. We have 4 LWV outwalkers. What I mean by that is these people have paid $1,000. One is your board. We paid $1,000 to have a walker. There are several board members who are collectively putting together $1,000. We have Marilyn, and if you don't mind, is an outwalker. I think Linda, and Dorothy. Now, we are going to, some people are saying, I don't want to do the walk. Paying the money, don't want to do the walk. So we are in the process at our next board meeting of suggestions for who the walkers will be. If you'd like to make the donation and then select a walker, we are working on that right now. There's information on the, I forgot to bring it, and on the table, the one that has the picture of the float on it. If you want to know about the walkers, just pick one of those up. The one with the yellow roses is called the VIAL, VIAL program, and that will cost only $20.20. So see, from $1,000 to $20.20, 2020, you can buy a yellow rose. They will wrap it with your name and put it in a vial with water, and those roses will be used on the float for women's right to vote. So you can also participate in that. The last piece on that is we have a date for decorating the float. It is December 28th. The shift that we've selected is 1 to 6 p.m. There's a sign-up sheet on the membership table. If you want to help decorate, sign up. If you're bringing a guest, sign up. I need your information so that I can forward you the form that has to be completed for all of those who will be participating in the decorating day.
5-hour commitment?
Excuse me?
Is it a 5-hour commitment?
No, you don't have to stay for the 5 hours. Yes. Okay, I think that's the update on, and then my last one, maybe not last one. Look for updated info on our 100th celebration, meaning the League's birthday, on February 14th, 2020, in your upcoming email voter. Look under the Centennial corner, and I will lay out our plan for that, and there are some exciting things that we will be doing in February. The last is an apology, and I want to make this publicly. Yes, I see Ann waving.
I'm wondering if there's an age minimum for the float decoration.
Yes, and once people sign up, does anybody remember it? I don't have the sheet with me, but there's more information about that. I know if you bring, I think they want you to be 18, but if you bring someone younger, you do have to fill out forms and give releases and things like that. But all of that will come after you sign up. Okay, the last thing is Gwyn Jones and Betty Ford. Oh, Gwyn Jones is up here, right here, and Betty Ford, just raise your hand. We did an awesome job with the ice cream social back in July. And many of you sitting in this room were donors to that social, which made it really a big hit for us. Inadvertently, 2 people's names were left off of the donor list. One was Gwyn Jones and one was Betty Ford, who gave donations to the ice cream social. And I just want to publicly apologize for that mishap. We will also mention something about them in the voter. But I want you all to know that we work very hard to make sure that those things do not happen. However, I'll go back to this is all volunteers, and everyone is doing a great job. We don't have any paid staff to this date, and I think sometimes it's hard things just sometimes fall through the cracks, So we want to make sure that we don't do that with any donor, and so to Betty and to Gwyn, we're sorry that happened. Won't happen again, we promise. Okay. I'm going to try to hold a mic for you while you talk. Okay, Mildred, 1 minute for Mildred Development. Let's see.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mildred Dockery, the Development Director, and I want to announce that we do have a place and a time and a date for our celebrating the first 100 years, Making Democracy Work, our Centennial Gala. It will be held on February 15th, 2020 at Almanza Court from 6 to 9 p.m. The tickets will be $100, and we hope everyone will participate and make this a great fundraiser as well as a great event to celebrate our 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Morgan. See if I can hold it for you.
Good morning. I'm Morgan Zadowitz. I'm the co-chair of the Healthcare Committee. I just want to invite everyone here
to our next League Day, which is November 7th, which will be about healthcare. And the speaker will be addressing models of healthcare, which was a high priority item in our annual planning this year. And we'll be talking about the models and what sort of lens you should be viewing the 2020 election through with regard to healthcare. So I hope everybody will come. Thanks.
All right. Bring a friend.
Yes, as always. Hi, I'm Catherine Gavsey, and
There you go. Just talk.
I'm the chair of the events committee. I was going to announce our upcoming League Day with the healthcare committee, but it's been
There you
done,
go.
so thank you.
Thank you.
Do come. It's going to be fascinating. Nobody understands all the healthcare plans, and we will be educated. The events committee is the people who, yes, there is a League at Night also. I gotta get, the events committee are the people who put together and organize these League days, as well as our new League at Night program. We would love to have some new members on that committee. If you like organizing events or just are curious to see what's involved, come to our next committee meeting. It's the first Tuesday of the month. Look for the information in your voter. We are doing a League at Night in October. It's going to be the 17th. And the chair of the committee
Is right behind you.
is right behind me, so she will tell
Great
you all
segue.
about it. But
Great
League at
segue.
Night is a whole new concept, and we think it's really going to work. Thank you.
All right, Maureen, yes.
Okay, I'm Maureen Johnston, and with National Resources Committee. You have on your table a flyer for League at Night. It's also on the website, and we'd love to see you there. Our speaker, Peter Kalmus, he's a climate change and kind of an expert. He's a earth scientist, and he's a climate activist. So it'll be a lively night. Please consider coming. I also wanted to mention that the Natural Resources Committee is having a field trip to the Metropolitan Water District. They're kind of model water processing plant. It's in the city of Carson. It's going to be on Friday, October 25th. We're leaving, it is at 10:30. We're leaving way before 10:30. Carpooling, parking in the lot across from the league's office. And we can take 30 members, up to 30 members. We don't have 30 members of our resource committee to go, so there are open places. What you just need to do is email Kitty Kroger, and she's in the directory. It's also K Kroger, Kroger at sbcglobal.net. And the reason we need to know in advance is they need to know your name.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, they need a list. They need people's names that are going. Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Maureen. Thank you. Cheryl, membership.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Rose. I'm with membership, and I want to let you know our league has, since the first of the year, we've gotten about 45 new members.
Woo-hoo!
So I'm very excited about that. We're up to full membership is $389. Now here's the bad part. Our current membership right now is $219, and it's really important that everybody get current because we have to send our dues into Virginia in December. And if you are a member, we have to pay for you even if you're not current. So we need everybody to get current.
Yes.
Anna's at the back table to take renewals on new memberships. And I'll just be nagging on you till December. I don't want to do that. How many are new members here?
We had a bunch this
A
morning.
few? Okay, great. We're having our new member orientation meet and greet on Sunday at Roger and Marilyn's home. Ann and Marilyn have more information if you need her address. We want everyone that's a new member since the first of the year to come out. Yes, Marilyn, do you want to say?
We could accommodate relatively new members at this point. We're happy to have additional people if they're here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anybody who wants to come can come.
right.
We won't send anybody away, but New members, we really want you to come. And this is part of our inclusion. We want new members to feel welcome and hear about the committees and get involved, because we need everybody to be involved. It's Sunday from 2 to 4.
2 to 4.
Okay? More information you can get from me or them. Thank you.
Yep.
And my name is Marna Cornell, and I'm the League's representative for the Women's Roundtable, which is held here once a month, and we've got the Status of Women Commission, which is also one of the sponsors, plus 50-50 leadership. And we meet once a month. We'll be dark on November and December, but we're meeting next Wednesday. It is free. It's at 5:30 p.m. right here at the Women's City Club, and our speaker is a woman named Brenda Smith. She's a licensed acupuncturist here in Pasadena. She is the founder of the Pasadena Breast Wellness Center, and she's the author of the best-selling book, Mammograms Do Not Prevent Breast Cancer. About 250,000 women are predicted to have it this year. And there are statistics and things around and global research that does point to the fact that it is preventable. So I urge you all to come. Thank you.
These are on the tables.
These are on the tables, and raise your hand if you want one to take home. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Marna. Gwyn, units, our units.
Hello, Pasadena.
Uh-oh, wait, let me
Hello, let's hold that thing.
Let me do it.
Hello, Pasadena League of Women Voters. Celebrate yourself today.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. We're running about 10% on the units that are coming out. In the month of September, there's a total of 36 people that participated over 4 different groups. Now we meet in September, October, and November, and then we all go to the Christmas party in December, and then we meet again in January, February, March, and May of 2020. Of course, you're invited, and bring a friend, and we have light refreshments. And it's a League of Women Voted setting in an informal environment about things that you mostly care about. So will you be coming in the month of October? The third Wednesday, October the 16th, and the third Thursday, October 17th. Thank you.
Thanks, Gwyn. Education, Elsa.
Hi. I want to urge everybody to come to the Education Committee, see what you like about it. Stay with us for a while. We are continuing our exploration of charter schools and public schools. We're hoping to get started in some of the exciting new initiatives for pre-K education. And whatever it is, our committee members wish to study. So this is your chance to form some good plans for the committee. And I also want to say, other hat on, North Unit is going to be meeting. We are a fantastic bunch. We make up in energy what we lack in membership numbers. And so we really enjoy it, and we love to see you all there.
Great, thank you. Bob, immigration.
Last but not least, the Immigration Committee is very proud to announce we have secured the services of Professor Jennifer Chacon of the University of California at Los Angeles Law School. And she will be speaking to our March League Day meeting on the topic of comprehensive immigration reform, something that we have not seen in this country in nearly 20 years. A very important topic. I hope you'll all be there. The committee meets tomorrow. Guests are welcome, 1 o'clock in the league offices.
Thank you, Bob. And last but certainly not least, our past president, Dorothy King, Communications.
Thanks, Pat. I decided to come up because it was an opportunity to give a pitch, of course. And as many of you know, I'm great at luring people in to do something in the league.
I would second that.
So I just want to do a quick survey of what our communications committee does. I don't want to say it's the most important committee in the league. I have a tendency to say that, but it certainly is way up at the top. And we're so grateful to Carol Cayley over here. If you'd raise your hand, Carol. She's the one putting up these great tweets. Tweets, yes. And I really want to encourage all of you, if you haven't really gone to our website yet, you really need to. and it's www.lwv-pa.org. And see all of the wonderful things on it. We also have Karina Jacob, who unfortunately is still working. She can't attend League Day because she is working, but she does our Facebook. And there's some great pictures up on Facebook. And the hits we seem to get on Facebook are those that have pictures. People love to look at pictures of themselves particularly.
That's what it's about.
But the Twitter account is really showing our She Is Me. And again, Carol has done a great job with it, and we thank all of you who are participating in that. But we also need new members, and we need new members to help us, particularly in the social media part of it, and also in the media in general. Jackie Knowles is our media person, and she really could use some assistance. So we're a great committee. And we just got a new member who joined us last night, who I think had to just leave, and that's Marie McDonald, and we're just delighted. And we have Gail Oswald, who we gave 10,000 jobs to as soon as she joined our committee. She's moving us ahead in the e-voter and getting things really on the web. So please consider joining us. Thank you. Oh, and Pasadena Media, how can I forget? You know, we are so very grateful that we have Pasadena Media giving us their service for free. They do 4 sessions for us, including today. Then it's put on YouTube, and it's up on our site. And the last League Day is, I think, ready to go up on our site now. And then today's League Day will be on the site and YouTube. So please become familiar with our website. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Any other burning, I see no burning questions, hands, whatever, up. And as we say, seeing none, we will stand adjourned. We will see you soon. There's lots going on, so definitely get involved. Stay active. We appreciate you being here today. And again, let's thank Virginia.